YouTube, what's going on? This is Draw Y'all back with another video. This is Why Our Black Lives Matter Trained Marxists. And I put it as this title because I think it's already been established that the Black Lives Matter organization are trained Marxists, and people get outraged about it and get upset. Some people don't care. But I think it's more important to understand why they are Marxists and how Marxism has impacted the world and particularly the so-called black community. I think it'd be so good to get into the details of that. And what better way than to bring in Black Lives Matter, the infamous organization that has basically assumed leadership in the so-called black community by powers that be. So this is the infamous interview where one of the founders of Black Lives Matter admitted that they're trained Marxists. Let's check it out. This is fair use.
You respond to that particular critique? Again, a loving critique from an elder of the struggle that some others share, that I've even shared as well, to be frank, is a concern about, in part because of the co-optation and the appropriation, that a more clear ideological structuring might be of some value here. But how do you respond to those kinds of, again, loving criticisms?
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might. I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
So when they say we're trained Marxists, the first thing you should ask, like, what is a Marxist? What is Marxism? That's a good question. So let's get into some history. I know you guys don't like all the details, so uh, where is it? Okay, we're gonna go straight to this. So what is Marxism? Well, first we have to go into who is Karl Marx. So Karl Marx, he's a philosopher. Sure, we've read about him or heard about him on our social studies class, our history class back in the day. Well, his name is Karl Heinrich Marx. FRSA was a German philosopher, critic of political economy, economist, historian, sociologist, political theorist, journalist, and socialist revolutionary. His best known titles are the 1848 pamphlet, the Communist Manifesto, and the three-volume Das Kapital. 1848 was a very pivotal year in not just European history, but of world history because it marked a lot of the Marxist revolutions, or really just they just saying revolutions of 1848, but they were all sparked by Karl Marx, who was really the brainchild for a lot of those movements. So the revolutions of 1848, Revolution 1848, a series of Republican revolts against the European monarchies, beginning in Sicily and spreading to France, Germany, Italy, and the Austrian Empire. They all ended in failure and repression and were followed by widespread disillusionment among liberals. And when they say they failed, because they failed in regards to the proletariat being in control. When they say the proletariat, that's the working class. So it's always the proletariat versus the monarchies, or the really the proletariat, the working class versus the capitalists versus ownership. That's why when you see like people unionize, like workers unionizing, they have some hints of communist origins with that, even though they're just trying to organize within themselves. There's always a hint that they're trying to start a communist type of revolution, because that's how it started. Communism or Marxism, it always starts with trying to help the oppressed fight against their overseers. So they always look for the this marginalized group or the disenfranchised group, and to galvanize them to go against the overlords. And they seem like they're a friend of the working class or the struggling person, but they really use that person as foot soldiers so they can destabilize the country or the establishment, and then they reap the benefits of the destabilization. In regards to the economy, they can reap in and collect they destabilize the economy and get the natural resources, or they can destabilize a whole country and they can take the land. So that's kind of what the revolutions are backed in. And Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, his partner, um, they were backed by very powerful people. I just say that. Um, but this was the revolutions of 1848. And you ever wonder why we don't have kings and queens anymore besides England? We just have presidents and prime ministers. Well, this is the reason. The revolution of 1848, Marxism is the reason why we don't have kings and queens anymore. All right. And right after these revolutions, if you type in when did the feminist movement start? July 1848. Wow, what a what a coincidence. The first attempt to organize a national movement for women's rights occurred in Seneca Falls, New York, July 1848. Oh, wow. That's interesting, huh? So the feminist movement started the summer 1848, right after the Marxist revolutions. And this was because they wanted to get women into the workforce. Why? So they can tax women and men separately. So the bankers make more money that way. And also, it was the beginning of starting to promote the divine feminine, aka the mother goddess, aka the queen of heaven. You promote the woman as a divine figure, and that has been growing ever since then. That's when a lot of things started to change. Even if you look at the marriage vows, there was the marriage vows for the woman to give to her husband was that love, honor, and obey. In the late 1800s or early 1900s, they took out obey in the marriage laws or marriage vows. So as you can see, they were, slowly making the genders more equal in regards to how they um, wanted them to interact with each other. And it's just been becoming more combative. And of course, in the so-called Black community, we have such a this uh, we have no culture in regards to what we see as right and wrong. So we're so much more exaggerated in regards to our sense of community. So the feminist movement, our women embraced that so wholeheartedly because it was something that was able to be uh, used to uplift them. Because the woman, she is all about trying to uplift herself. That's the spirit of Eve. She always tries to gain more power, more wisdom, more authority. She really wants to, just kind of be better than the man. She wants to be like God. That's the spirit of Eve, and that's why all women they come from Eve, so they all have that spirit to a degree. All right. Oh, before we get to that, and I just wanted to say Karl Marx, going back to his Communist Manifesto. Um, you can always read that, but I'm just gonna summarize just Karl Marx, just his history. He was a part of a organization called the League of the Just, and that's where he was given the task. Him and Friedrich Engels, they were given the task to write the Communist Manifesto. And the Communist Manifesto was it's like a philosophical essay on how to help the working class or disenfranchised people overthrow capitalism, or the government, or basically the kingdom. Um, but that's what it allegedly was supposed to be about. But when you look into Marxism or the Communist Manifesto, you can see that it was really a treatise for Luciferianism. And one of the core components of Luciferianism is you want to deprivatize everything. You want to remove privacy rights. You really don't want people to own anything privately. You want everything to be owned by the powers that be. And also, you want to take away the ownership of land. You want to destroy the family structure. You want to infiltrate the educational system, and you want to separate any belief in a spiritual entity. And as you can see, all these things have been occurring in America over the last 150 years. So, because communism is slowly being implemented in America, because communism is the ideal government that the powers that be want to be the ideology, because it's easier to take money from the people if they're atheists and they're not connected to family. As you can see, when people are isolated and independent, we see that today. It's like especially so-called black women, they're the, single independent, most of them, and they spend a lot of money. They're the most consumers, so they spend a lot of money. So if you get people to be independent of a family structure, they have no responsibilities in regards to that, then they'll spend money more um, haphazardly without really caring. So that's what the whole Communist Manifesto is really about, in a nutshell. And this is all my perspective. This is all my alleged perspective. I'm just saying. But this is also a photo, very popular photo they used against Martin Luther King Jr. That he attended the Communist Training School. Now, Martin Luther King would say that he was in fellowship with some communists, but him himself wasn't a communist. In my perspective, I believe he was a communist. That's allegedly. That's just my perspective. Uh, I think when the FBI tapes that come out in 2027, when they get released, they'll tell a lot of stories that are going to really show a lot of light on Martin Luther King and a lot of people in that civil rights era. But I personally, I think he did believe in his cause. I think he thought he was doing the right thing, but he was controlled to promote the civil rights movement and to bring in the disenfranchised so-called blacks or so-called Negroes into society, to not just to tax them, but also to promote instability in America by because bringing all races together causes that confusion to a certain extent. Diversity can be great because you bring it in different perspectives in regards to this person's from here and this person's from there and this person's from there, so you can have different ideas, but at the same time you're going to cause confusion and frustration from the people because everybody has a different culture, everybody has different customs, so you're going to cause friction. And especially with so-called black people, we are the most uh, cut off from our culture, that we kind of tend to cause a lot of confusion in regards to where we are. So that's just just how it is. Um, but as you can see, this is the communist fist, and it's the Black Lives Matter fist, and you see the similarities, because that's what Black Lives Matter is about. It's about promoting communism. It's really not about what they say it is, to uplift or to prevent police brutality in the so-called black community. Because as so-called black men, we make up what, like 7%, 6 or 7% of the U.S. population, but we make up over 50% of the homicides. So if we're really trying to stop the victimization of each other in regards to in regards to our community, we would start with ourselves. We try to check ourselves, because most of those homicides are against other so-called black men and women and children. So Black Lives Matter is it's a scam, allegedly, and it's just to promote communism. And going back to MLK, back in the day, he was like I said, I think he did believe in his cause, but him and other members, when he was a part of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, they believe integration was the solution to a lot of our problems. But looking back on retrospect, we could see that integration since the 1960s has only led to higher rates of incarceration, higher rates of unemployment, higher rates of economic debt, single motherhood, and decreased marriage rates. So, you know, you just have to think about, was this plan, was it really worth it? But you can tell that MLK was used, because once he had the Civil Rights Act signed in 1964, and he started to begin to speak about other topics like the Vietnam War and union rights for sanitation workers, he was killed, because his act was done. Got the Civil Rights Act passed, and now Negroes and immigrants, women, LGBT all became part of the mainstream society. and eventually they will become the major influences of American society. And now that was almost 60 years ago, and now we're here today. So you see how things have been progressing in regards to this kind of Marxist movement. And one thing too, about MLK that's pretty kind of creepy is that when he died on April 4th, 1968 at 6 p.m. in his hotel. He died outside his hotel room on a balcony, room 306. Now, in the Bible, you always see about the six, and that's the thing about, how this world is. They're always going to put out this number six because the people that run this world, the powers that be, they believe in the Bible. They just don't want you to believe in the Bible. So, because they understand the prophecies that are going to befall on the people, and they don't want you to understand that. They want to cause confusion because everything is scripted, man. And even before when Martin Luther King died, the day before he died, the movie Planet of the Apes, the original film Planet of the Apes, came out April 3rd, 1968, and that was to show that he was the he was the chief ape and he was about to get killed. And that's why it's like, everything is kind of very scripted, very spiritual. That's what we have to keep ourselves high up to date what the Most High wants us to do in regards to the scriptures. We have to make sure that we play our script well because the rest of the world, they're playing their script very well, very demonic. So we have to live in a way that's very upstanding to the Most High and what He wants us to do. And that's going to take a lot of focus. It's going to take a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice, but we have to do it in order to counterbalance a lot of these demonic energies out here. All right. So that's what it's about. The communists and the Black Lives Matter movement, one and the same, allegedly. This is all my alleged opinion. So, but, that's what it is, man. Just so y'all can understand and kind of, decipher and have discernment in regards to this. I don't want y'all to get caught up in that. All right. Peace.